They say every town has a secret. Some hide theirs in old basements, some bury them in forgotten graves. But in Briarwood, our secret came wrapped in caramelized sugar. On a stick. And I was the one who tasted it first. October always arrived early in BRIARWOOD. Not on the calendar, in the air, by late September. The wind already carried that sharp metallic chill that sliced through your jacket and settled into your bones. The trees along Maple Street began shedding their leaves like dying animals, painting the sidewalks in brittle reds and browns. Store windows filled with plastic skeletons and cheap orange lights. And every year, without fail, the Hollow Harvest Festival rose from the town square like some ancient ritual. We pretended was just for fun. I'd lived here my whole life, 36 years, never once missed the festival. Not because I loved it, but because everyone went. If you stayed home, people noticed. Briarwood was that kind of town, the kind where absence spoke louder than presence. This year, the festival opened on a Friday evening. I remember because I'd just finished a 10-hour shift at the warehouse. My back aching, my head buzzing from fluorescent lights and conveyor belts. I almost skipped it. Almost went home, heated up leftover pasta, and collapsed on the couch. But something pulled at me. A quiet pressure behind my ribs, so I showered, changed, and drove downtown. The square was already alive when I arrived. Strings of amber bulbs crisscrossed overhead, glowing like captive fireflies. Children ran between booths dressed as witches and zombies. A local band played off-key covers of old rock songs. The smell of fried dough and kettle corn hung thick in the air. I wandered, aimlessly at first, past the pumpkin carving contest, past the dunk tank, past the hayride line. That's when I saw the candy apple stand. It wasn't where it usually was. Every year, Mrs. Calder ran that booth. Same spot, same recipe. Same sticky red apples that cracked your teeth and glued your lips together. But Mrs. Calder had died in March. Heart attack in her kitchen. And this newsstand, it didn't belong. The booth itself looked handmade, built from dark, unfinished wood. No banner, no prices listed. Just a single hanging lantern casting warm light over a neat row of apples. They were beautiful, glossy crimson shells, so perfectly smooth they looked unreal. Each one sat upright on a pale wooden stick, arranged in careful lines like offerings. Behind the counter stood a man, tall, thin, dressed in black slacks and a charcoal gray coat that felt too formal for a street festival. His hair was slicked straight back, revealing a narrow face and eyes so dark they swallowed reflections. He smiled when he noticed me staring. Not a friendly smile. A knowing one, first time. He asked. His voice was soft, calm, almost intimate. Despite the noise around us, first time seeing this stand, I replied. He nodded slowly. Yes, I'm new. I stepped closer. Where's Mrs. Calder's booth? The man tilted his head. She's moved on. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. I pointed at the apples. How much? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lifted one gently from the display and held it toward me. No charge. I hesitated. Free. For you, he said. I laughed nervously. Why me? His eyes flicked briefly to my chest, then back to my face. Everyone has to start somewhere. The apple gleamed under the lantern. I could see my distorted reflection in its surface. I should have walked away. I didn't. I took it. The stick was warm in my hand. Strangely warm. Enjoy? A man said. I turned. Weaving back into the crowd, I found an empty bench near the fountain and sat down. The apple smelled incredible, sweet, rich, almost floral beneath the caramel. I raised it to my mouth. The shell cracked softly under my teeth. The flavor exploded across my tongue. Not just sugar, something deeper, like cinnamon and clove and a faint copper temps I couldn't place. I chewed slowly. That's when I felt it. A vibration, subtle at first, like distant thunder. I froze. The sensation pulsed against my palm. Once, twice, 3 times, my heart skipped. I lowered the apple. Staring at it, the surface was still smooth. Perfect. I pressed my thumb against the side. It pushed back, not hard, not soft. Elastic, alive, a laugh escaped my throat. Shaky and disbelieving. I told myself it was nerves, cold hands. Festival noise messing with my eye. Senses? I took another bite. The vibration grew. Stronger, I pulled the apple away. Again, now there was no mistaking it. It was beating slow, steady, in rhythm with my own heart. My mouth went dry. I stood up, nearly dropping the thing, and scanned the crowd for the man in the gray coat. The booth was gone. Not gone. Just open pavement where it had been. I pushed through people, ignoring confused looks, searching the perimeter of the square. Nothing. The apple thumped in my hand once, twice. I threw it into the sip. Trash. It landed with a wet sound. I wiped my hands on my jeans and forced myself to breathe. You're overtired, I muttered. I left the festival early that night. I dreamed of roots growing through my chest. I woke at 3:17 a.m. with my heart racing. My bedroom was silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. I lay still, staring at the ceiling. Then I felt it. That same vibration. Inside me, I sat up abruptly. Clutching my chest, my heartbeat was wrong. Not faster, not slower, heavier. Each thump echoed through my rib cage like something striking wood from the inside. Swung my legs over the bed and staggered into the bathroom. My reflection looked pale. Drawn. I splashed water on my face. That's when I noticed the mark just below my sternum, a faint red circle, no bigger than a coin, centered perfectly over my heart. I touched it. It was warm, and beneath my fingers, something pulsed back. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed until sunrise. One hand pressed against my chest. Counting the beats, they were steady. Too steady. Each thump felt heavier than it should have. Like something inside me was learning the rhythm by morning. The red mark had darkened. It looked like a bruise now, circular, precise, almost surgical. I called in sick to work. Then I drove myself to urgent care. The nurse took my vitals. Blood pressure, normal. Oxygen, fine. Temperature slightly elevated, but nothing alarming. She barely glanced at the mark before shrugging it off. Probably an insect bite, she said. I told her it pulsed. She gave me a polite smile. Sometimes anxiety can create that sensation. The doctor agreed. He ordered an EKG just to humor me. The printout showed a healthy heart, no arrhythmia, no abnormalities. Try to relax, he said, already halfway out the door. Drink fluids. If it gets worse, come back. I drove home feeling stupid, but the feeling didn't leave. It followed me into the shower, into the kitchen, into every quiet corner of my apartment. That night, I felt it again, not just in my chest, in my throat, in my wrists. A faint internal vibration, spreading outward like ripples in a pond. I started noticing other things too. Sounds felt louder, smells sharper. The neighbor's dog barking 3 houses down made my jaw tighten. When I passed a butcher shop on Main Street, the scent of raw meat made my mouth water. That scared me more than anything. By Monday, the town started changing. At first, it was subtle. Mrs. Ellison, from across the hall, missed her morning cigarette on the stoop. The barista at my usual coffee place didn't show up. For her shift, 2 kids were marked absent from school. People blamed the flu. Then someone found a shoe in the creek behind Briarwood High, just a shoe, no foot inside. The police cordoned off the area. Divers searched the water. Everyone whispered about accidents, but accidents don't leave clean shoes. I went back to the square that evening, not because I wanted to, because I needed to. The festival booths were gone, replaced by empty pavement and chalk outlines from children's games. The lantern strings still hung overhead. Swaying in the breeze, I walked straight to where the candy apple stand had been. Nothing. I stood there for a long time. Staring at bare concrete, you won't find it that way. I turned on the man in the gray coat stood behind me. Same slicked back hair, same dark eyes, same smile. My stomach dropped. "You," I said. "What did you give me?" He studied my face like a doctor evaluating a patient. "You accepted a gift. I threw it away." He nodded. Double quotes, "Yes, you tried." My pulse hammered in my ears. What's happening to me? He gestured toward a nearby bench. "Sit." I didn't want to. I did anyway. He joined me, folding his hands neatly in his lap. "Have you ever wondered why Briarwood exists?" He asked. "What?" He ignored the question. This town wasn't built because of the river, or the rail line, or fertile soil. I stared at him. Then why? He finally looked at me, because something sleeps beneath it. Cold slid down my spine. "I don't have time for this," I said. Standing, his hand shot out and wrapped around my wrist. His grip was iron. "You do?" he said softly. "Because it's already inside you." I froze. His eyes flicked to my chest. "You were chosen because you're empty," he continued. "No family. No children. No roots. You're a perfect vessel." My mouth went dry. "Let go of me." He released my wrist. "You'll feel hungrier soon," he said. "That's normal. Don't fight it." Then he stood and walked away. I followed him through the square, down Oak Street, around a corner, and then he was gone, just gone. No footsteps, no doors. Opening nothing, I drove home shaking. That night, I tore my apartment apart, looking for the apple in the trash. Knowing how insane that sounded, it was gone. The hunger started on Tuesday. Not normal hunger. Not the kind that makes your stomach growled. This was deeper. It sat behind my ribs and whispered. I tried to eat. Cereal tasted like cardboard. Toast felt like ashdot soup slid through me without satisfaction. By evening, I was dizzy. My hands trembled. The red mark on my chest had spread into thin, branching lines, faint and pink, creeping outward like veins. I pressed my palm against it. Something shifted under my skin. I gagged. I ended up at the grocery store just before closing. I wandered the aisles aimlessly, sweat dripping down my back. Then I reached the meat section. I stood there, staring at packages of steak and chicken breasts and ground beef. My vision, TUNNELED. My mouth filled with saliva. I grabbed a package of raw sirloin and hurried to self-checkout. I don't remember paying. I remember sitting in my car, tearing the plastic open with my teeth. I remember the cold flesh against my tongue. I remember crying as I swallowed. The hunger eased, not completely, but enough to let me breathe. I threw up in a storm drain afterward. Then I drove home and scrubbed my hands until they bled. People started disappearing in clusters. Whole family on Pine Street. 3 elderly residents from the assisted living. FACILITYA bus driver who never returned from his route. The Police held press conferences. They talked about possible cult activity, trafficking, serial predators. No bodies turned up, just personal items, clothes folded neatly in parks, wallets placed on benches, phones left charging in empty apartments, like people had simply stepped out of their lives. The news vans arrived, so did reporters. They interviewed anyone who would talk. I didn't. I stayed. Inside, the vibrations grew stronger. I could feel movement beneath my skin now, especially at night. Sometimes I'd wake up with my hands pressed over my heart, nails digging into flesh. Trying to hold something in, I started seeing things, shadows stretching where they shouldn't, faces in reflective surfaces that weren't mine. Once, while brushing my teeth, I swore my reflection blinked out of sync. I stopped looking in mirrors after that. On Thursday, I found vines growing out of a storm drain behind my building. They were thin and pale, almost translucent, pushing up through concrete cracks. Small bulbous nodules dotted their length, pulsing faintly. I knew with absolute certainty that they were connected to me. I followed them. They led toward the old canning factory on the edge of town. The place had been abandoned since the late 90s. Broken windows, rusted doors, graffiti peeling off crumbling brick. I stood outside for a long time, heart pounding. Then I went in. Inside, the air was wet and warm. The vines covered the floor like veins on exposed muscle. They climbed the walls, disappeared into ceiling vents, wrapped around broken machinery. And in the center of the factory, there was a hole, not dug, grown, a wide organic opening in the concrete, lined with fibrous tissue that glistened under my flashlight. The beating was loud here, not just inside me, in the building, in the ground, in the walls. I knelt at the edge and looked down. I couldn't see the bottom. Something breathed from below, a slow, ancient exhale. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. You weren't supposed to come alone. The man in the gray coat stood near the entrance. You said I was empty, I told him. You said I was a vessel. What does that mean? He approached carefully, like someone nearing a wild animal. It means your heart is becoming a seed. My vision swam. What? The apples are catalysts, he said. They prepare the body, rewrite it, open pathways. I backed away from the hole. Why? He spread his hands. Because it's starving. A deep tremor rolled through the building. Dust fell from the rafters. I nearly lost my balance. People are disappearing, I said. Is it killing them? He shook his head. No, it's absorbing them. My chest burned. You're feeding it. Yes, and me. He met my eyes. You're not food. My heart thumped painfully. Then what am I? He hesitated. For you, he said quietly, there's a different role. Asterisk, asterisk. I didn't answer him right away. My chest felt too tight, like something inside me was expanding against my ribs. The vibrations had become constant now. No longer subtle pulses, but a low, steady hum that traveled through my spine and into my teeth. The air inside the factory felt thicker with every breath, heavy with rot and sweetness. Like overripe fruit left too long in the sun. For you, the man repeated. Softer this time, there's a different role. I swallowed. What role? He looked past me, down into the hole. You're becoming a root. The word landed wrong. Roots belonged to trees, to plants. Two things that didn't move or speak or remember who they used to be. I don't understand, I said. He stepped closer. Up close, I could see faint cracks in his skin, like dried clay. His eyes reflected the pulsing glow from the vines, giving them an almost liquid sheen. Briarwood was built over an orchard, he said. Not of apples. Of bodies. I stared at him. That doesn't make sense. It wasn't always called Briarwood, he continued. 2 centuries ago, this land belonged to a religious settlement. They believed God spoke through the earth, that he planted his will in soil and bone. They dug deep. They sacrificed. They listened. My throat tightened. They found something, he said. Or something found them. The factory trembled again, harder this time. Somewhere in the distance, metal groaned. They tried to destroy it, he went on. Fire, flooding, collapse. But it didn't die. It adapted. It went dormant. And over time, the town grew around it. Schools, homes, roads, people living their quiet little lives on top of a mouth that never fully closed. My hands were shaking. So why now? He smiled faintly. Because hunger always returns. I took another step back. You said the apples were catalysts. Yes, you made them. No, he corrected. I harvest them. My stomach twisted. From where? He pointed at my chest. From people like you. The words knocked the breath out of me. I didn't volunteer for this. None of you do. I backed away until my heel brushed the edge of the hole. Warm air rushed up around my legs. People are disappearing, I said. Families, children. They're being replanted, he replied calmly. Their bodies nourish the root system. Their hearts become nodes. They help it grow. And me. He hesitated again. You're different. My laugh came out cracked and hysterical. You already said that. You didn't just eat the apple, he said. You synchronized with it. The vibrations inside me surged, as if reacting to his words. You felt it beating, he continued. You recognized it. Most people don't. They just taste sugar and spice and go home. Their bodies change slowly, quietly, but yours opened immediately. My vision blurred. So what happens to me? He studied me like a broken machine. You become a conduit. The world tilted. I grabbed a nearby railing to keep from falling. A bridge between surface and core. You carry its rhythm. You help guide others toward it. No, I whispered. He nodded sadly. Yes. I ran. I don't remember how I got out of the factory. I remember cold air slamming into my lungs. I remember stumbling through weeds and gravel, my boots slipping on damp concrete. I remember throwing up beside my car, bile burning my throat. I drove home in a fog. Every streetlight seemed too bright, every shadow too deep. That night, I tried to cut the mark out of my chest. I sterilized a kitchen knife. I stood shirtless in front of the bathroom mirror, breathing hard, sweat dripping down my spine. The red branching lines now covered most of my torso, faintly glowing in the dark like bioluminescent veins. I pressed the blade against my skin. The moment it pierced flesh, pain exploded through my body. But underneath, the pain was resistance. The tissue beneath my skin felt fibrous, dense, almost woody. I screamed and dropped the knife. Blood trickled down my stomach. The wound closed. Before my eyes, the skin knit itself together in seconds, leaving only a faint scar. I collapsed onto the bathroom floor and sobbed. I stopped going outside after that, but it didn't matter. It was inside me now. I started hearing whispers in the walls, not voices exactly, more like vibrations shaped into meaning. They guided me, showed me paths through town I'd never noticed before, made me aware of underground spaces, basements, storm drains, crawl spaces, all connected by pale vines that pulsed in time with my heart. I could feel other people changing too. I'd pass strangers on the sidewalk and sense the faint echo of the rhythm inside them. Some were just beginning, nervous, distracted, rubbing their chests without knowing why. Others were further along, eyes glassy, movements stiff. walking as if pulled by invisible strings. Once, I saw Mrs. Ellison from across the hall standing, barefoot, in the parking lot at 3 in the morning. She was smiling. Her chest rose and fell too slowly. Thin white tendrils crept out from beneath her nightgown and disappeared into a storm drain. She didn't acknowledge me. She didn't need to. She was already part of it. The disappearances accelerated. The news stopped calling them missing persons. They started using the word migration. Authorities suggested mass psychosis, environmental toxins, gas leaks. None of them explained the empty houses with warm floors, or the way gardens across town began producing oversized, glossy red apples that no one remembered. Planting, I knew what they were. I could feel them. Growing. The hunger returned, stronger than ever. Raw meat no longer satisfied. It neither did cooked food. I started craving. Sweetness, caramel, fruit, sugar made my veins sing. One evening, I woke up standing in my kitchen with apple juice dripping down my chin, surrounded by peels and cores. I ain't remember eating. The vibrations inside me had synchronized with something deeper. Now, something older. I went back to the factory. Not because I wanted answers, because it was calling me. The hole had widened. The vines were thicker. The walls looked less like brick and more like flesh. And beneath it all, I sensed movement, massive, patient, waiting. The man in the gray coat was there again. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. I knelt at the edge of the opening. Warm air washed over my face. My chest burned. I pressed my palm against the mark and felt it pulse in response to the rhythm below. That's when I understood the truth. The candy apples weren't bait. They were invitations. And I wasn't being consumed. I was being promoted. Asterisk. I stopped fighting after that, not all at once, at first. I told myself I was only observing, studying, trying to understand what had happened to my town. But the truth was simpler. Every time I stepped into the factory, every time I felt the warmth rising from the hole beneath Briarwood, something inside me relaxed, like I was finally standing where I kick, like I was finally standing where I belonged. The underground space had changed. The hole was no longer just an opening. It had become a passage, sloping downward in smooth, organic curves. The walls glistened faintly, threaded with pale vines that pulsed in time with my heartbeat. They brushed against my arms as I walked, leaving behind a tingling numbness that crept up my spine. I didn't need a flashlight anymore. The place glowed softly on its own. I followed the passage until it widened into a vast chamber, calling. A cave didn't feel right. It was more like the inside of a living organism. The ceiling arched high above me, ribbed with fibrous structures that slowly expanded and contracted. Thick, root-like columns descended into a glossy floor that reflected everything like dark water. Bulbous growths clung to the walls, some transparent enough to reveal human shapes curled. Inside, people, neighbors, teachers, cashiers. Their faces were peaceful. They weren't dead. They were dreaming. At the center of the chamber stood the core. It was enormous, a pulsating mass of deep red tissue, threaded with glowing veins that radiated outward into every root and vine. It beat slowly, powerfully, sending waves of vibration through the chamber. Each pulse echoed inside my chest. I approached without fear. The man in the gray coat waited beside it. You see now, he said. Yes. My voice sounded distant, hollow. This is what Briarwood was built for, he continued. A nursery, a shelter, a feeding ground. I stared at the core, mesmerized by its rhythm. "It's not evil," I said. "No," he agreed. "It's biological." I felt something shift inside me. A warmth spread from my heart through my veins. "What am I?" I asked. He looked at me with something like reverence. "You're the first fully synchronized host in generations." My chest burned. Thin, pale tendrils emerged from my skin, weaving into the surrounding vines. There was pain, but it was distant, muffled, like hearing screams underwater. "You carry its signal," he said. "You walk among them." You opened doors. Images flooded my mind. Crowded. Streets open. Festivals. Children laughing. Rows of shining. Red apples on wooden sticks. "You will help it spread." I nodded, because it was already true. The core pulsed. Harder, and something inside me opened. Asterisk, asterisk. I still remember what it felt like to be human. That's the cruelest part. I remember sunlight on my face. I remember coffee in the morning. I remember the way October air used to smell before everything became sweet. Those memories live in me like fossils. I walk the streets of Briarwood now, and no one notices anything strange. They see a tired man in a jacket. They don't see the faint glow beneath my skin. They don't hear the rhythm inside my chest. They don't feel the roots spreading beneath their feet. The authorities eventually gave up. They blamed sinkholes, underground fires, chemical contamination. The news cycle moved on, the way it always does. People always move on. That's what makes them perfect. The factory is gone now, collapsed overnight. But the orchard remains. It stretches beneath the town, beneath neighboring cities, beneath highways and rivers and quiet suburban cul-de-sacs. The core has grown faster than anyone predicted. It learned from us. It adapted. It discovered that hearts make excellent seeds. The man in the gray coat doesn't guide me anymore. He doesn't need to. I guide myself. I organize festivals in new towns. I help local vendors set up booths. I smile politely at parents while their children tug at their hands, begging for treats. The apples are better now, sweeter, smoother, perfectly red. Each one carries a fragment of the rhythm. Each one waits for a mouth, sometimes late at night. I stand alone in empty town squares and listen to the underground pulse spreading outward, city by city, country by country. It's beautiful, it's efficient, it's inevitable. I used to think I was being consumed. I was wrong. I was being prepared. You see? The core doesn't want to destroy humanity. It wants to become it, and I'm just the first branch above ground. So if your town announces a new harvest festival this fall, if you see a candy apple stand that wasn't there before, if the vendor offers you one for free, take it. Everyone has to start somewhere.